And I hope it'll be a real challenge to people when they hear it.
Well, I hope it will be. Really, I do.
Hello, I'm Walter Carlson. Through the 24 years I've been associated with radio station WMBI in Chicago, it's been my privilege to interview hundreds of missionaries. But the interview we want to share with you today is one of the most interesting and challenging that I've ever experienced. This is Arlene Peterson, one of our conference missionaries to Assam, India. Arlene, you've been quoted as saying, "I wonder what will have to happen to us before we really see the opportunity and the urgency of our field in Assam." Why do you say that?
Well, we prayed for a field, and God gave to us this field on the north bank of Assam, India.
Yes.
And then, since that time, there have been some catastrophes. 3 catastrophes. Yes? 4 catastrophes that have come that I shall never forget, and they taught me lots.
Let's ask about the first catastrophe you're referring to.
You mean the earthquake?
Yes.
Well, that was back in 1950. I'll never forget that.
What were the physical effects?
Well, it was night. And all of a sudden, there was a great boom that just shook our house, and it shook the kerosene lamp, so we thought it'd fall over. We could hardly stand up, and the ground opened up. Water just seemed to come from everywhere. Well, I've just never experienced anything like it before.
How did it affect the people?
Well, pretty soon you began to know when the tremors were coming, because you could hear the Hindus way off over in the distance from long ways away beginning to call out, "Ram, Ram, Ram," and then the noise got louder and louder. You knew the tremor was coming closer and closer. And then the Mohammedans would call out, "Allah, Allah," to their God, and then they knew that tremor was coming closer, and sure enough, there would be another tremor. I don't know how many there were even that first night.
Weren't you afraid?
Well, I hate to say, but I really was kind of afraid. But it took a little boy to have us all come to our senses. You know, we were just a little group of Christians gathered together in the one dry spot we could find on our football field. And as we sat there in silence, do you know that this little boy, though his house fell down and he crawled out through a window, that he came carrying his songbook? And then in the midst of all this confusion and noise and screaming, he says, "Let's sing a song." So there we sat singing while the rest were screaming.
A tremendous picture that was.
Well, it didn't take long for people to come and stand near us, just to be near, to get refuge.
What role did you take? Were you able to help?
Oh, yes. I was so thankful we were there at that time. Do you know that we were some of the first, well, we were the first to go to the head one in our town with something to help? We brought a check over from World Relief Funds. We were very thankful, and we just felt like our people at home wanted to be with us on the helping of all these refugees that had come to us. We sat and figured out just about how much even they would like to share. There was no time to get word home. We just took a step of faith. But you know, I'd hardly dare do it now.
You know, the flood then that followed that quake, would you tell us about this?
Do you know, the earthquake caused the mountains to fall, and it sounded to us just like cannons going off. But really it was the mountains that were just falling down. And it caused one of the greatest rivers we have there to be stopped up. And every day we thought that river would break through. But it just kept piling up this water there. And everybody listened, waiting for the water to come. About the 5th day, it did break through. And it came down, you could just hear it coming out of the mountains, and it'd be a wall of water, taking everything with it that it came across. But down in the plains, we had built a new mission camping spot. Tin roofs, strong posts. And you know, when the people heard the water coming, that's where they ran. And they climbed on top, and about 200 people crowded together on top of that roof. And everyone on the roof was saved. But everything else in that village got washed away.
Arlene, what did God say to you in this terrible catastrophe?
This is where he really spoke to me. I saw the multitudes perish, and I saw the multitudes coming from everywhere for help, and realizing we were there to help them and to bring them something that they never had. And besides that we were there. I can remember Grace, my co-worker, and I getting in a corner and just praying and thanking God that we were there. But you know, we thought our time was up. And so much so that we thank God for the few days that we'd been there. We'd even thought of building a raft, but we thought, what's the use? So we were ready to perish, thinking this was it. But you know, that was back in 1950.
And God has given you a second chance.
Oh, yes. And so many years. We hardly would have believed it then. Actually, there was another catastrophe, the second.
Excuse me, Arlene, but possibly many other folk like myself have forgotten their geography. I wonder if you might just locate us for us the area of Assam.
Assam is really one of the provinces of India. It's way over in the northeast corner, as far over as you can get. And the province itself is surrounded by several different countries. One of them is to the southwest, and that is East Pakistan. Then another is Burma, which is located on the southeast side of Assam. Then go up to the north and you'll find China. And then next would be Tibet, which is now under Chinese rule. And next to Tibet is Bhutan. All of these countries border our province. And we are connected to the mainland of India, however, by just a very narrow strip of land. Oh, maybe about 40 miles wide. We're just surrounded. It was when the Chinese communists entered into Tibet, and all the refugees and even the Dalai Lama, their God King, escaped and came right down to Tezpur. They found their way down into Assam.
Would you tell us what you yourself saw during this time?
Well, we saw the red carpet out where the Dalai Lama was to go to speak to the public. But do you know what happened? It really was something. They had a special conference where all the newsmen could meet together with the Dalai Lama, and they also invited our missionaries to be along with them. But one of the missionaries, George Johnson, took his daughter along, and his daughter's name was Carol. She was only about 7 then. And everybody loves children. Even the Dalai Lama took special notice of her. And he shook her hand, of course using the left hand. But immediately, little Carol turned to her daddy and said, "I should have had a tract to put into his hand."
From what you've been sharing, that incident seems symbolic. It almost seems like a parable. It seems that Assam has been reaching out to shake hands with you, especially through the earthquake and through your other ministries. Are you able to put into that outstretched hand the things that it needs?
Well, we've tried to do what we could. but really it's so little.
How about the Christian literature situation in the Assamese language?
Do you know that in just the one language of Assamese, that we hardly have enough books to go on a bookshelf, say about 10 inches long. And included in that is a big Bible that really needs revision and reprinting.
What a tremendous challenge. I'll pray with you that by God's grace you will be able to put the tract, the needed Christian literature, into the outstretched hand in Assam. How else did God speak to you in this great catastrophe?
Well, it was particularly the way the news agencies had given an order to their reporters to get this news back to them and to the world.
But tell me more about the Tibetan situation.
Do you know that they were told that as far as the expenses were concerned, the sky was the limit? For this little piece of news that the Tibetan king had come out of Tibet and come to Tezpur, there were newsmen, there were photographers, there was cameramen of every sort there to take his picture, and besides all this, they had chartered planes, 8. And then they had the taxis that they were paying, up to 40 rupees a day to have. We didn't have them there in town. They had to bring them in from other places. But in order to get this piece of news back, using the telegraph, 1,000-word cablegrams and all, for this news, they were told the sky was the limit as far as their commission was concerned. I wished then that we had the same commission for our news.
Yes, but haven't you got that kind of commission? Didn't the Lord say, all authority has been given unto me? Go ye therefore?
Yes, we certainly have his commission to go. That's what took us through the earthquake and all the rest. We all feel that God has sent us. But it takes more than that. You know, Paul said, how shall they preach except they be sent? And you know, we've had so little to do with.
What do you mean?
Well, the needs have been so great. Just thinking of the wings and the space for the hospital that's needed, the new buildings for our Bible schools that are just temporary buildings, and up in Lakhimpur, where we're saying no to students that would never get a chance to hear the gospel unless they were there with us. We've cried over this. We've had to say no to too many. And then the need for the high school, where these young people can be trained. Oh, the needs.
Well, Arlene, I certainly will have to promise to pray with you that God will help the folks here in the homeland to say, get out the good news of the gospel. The sky is the limit as far as expenses are concerned. We're with you. Well, Arlene, I hardly dare to ask what the third catastrophe was.
It was the Chinese invasion of Assam, India in 1962.
Oh, yes, I remember that very well. I remember how the entire Christian world was praying so definitely that God would stop the Chinese communists and save India. Were you in Assam at that time?
I was. I remember when the order came from the Army for all foreigners of our area to evacuate. I remember even better not leaving the things that we own so much, even our homes. That didn't mean anything to us. But do you know what meant most to me at that time? I can remember standing by the car with all the people coming around to say goodbye. The ones that we had worked with. It was with tears. Even Mr. Hagstrom tried to close with prayer and couldn't. He got halfway through, and the national pastor had to start praying and close with prayer. It was hard.
Yes. Tell us more. Did you have vehicles enough to make your getaway?
May I tell you just about my car?
Fine.
My car had 3 borrowed wheels, no spare tire, a 4-wheel drive that dropped through someplace we don't know where, and a clutch that broke, and we drove 500 miles with no clutch.
Well, how did you manage to start the car?
Well, car in front of us pushed backwards when necessary, car in back of us pushed forward when necessary, and if we had to make a U-turn, it was hand pushed.
Well, did you have food on this trip? Were you able to manage to carry enough food?
I don't know how much the mothers appreciated this, but I had packed food enough for 3 people to make the trip. We were 16. So I treated each of the children sweets just before mealtime, enough to spoil their appetites.
Well, how far did you think the communists were behind you at this time?
Well, I know when our last missionaries left Tezpur, when they went out to the airport to be evacuated, they didn't know in whose hands the airport was in. We came after that. When we got to Tezpur, it had been evacuated. We saw the banks burning money, the military burning papers. And previous to this, we'd even heard Nero bid farewell to Assam over the radio.
I'm sure God spoke many things to you in that experience. What would you say was his biggest lesson?
It was the same as back in the earthquake. We thought we were through. We had said goodbye to our people.
And then God gave you a second chance again.
Yes. And that was back in November 1962. And we're still there. And I'm going back.
3 great earth-shaking catastrophes, and all of them centered in Assam. I can see now why you've been saying, I wonder what will have to happen in order for us to see the urgency and the need in Assam. I know that God has been speaking to me.
Oh, but I said that there were 4. And the 4th is really the worst catastrophe.
Oh, yes, you did say that there were 4. Well, what was the 4th one?
Well, the 4th has been going on all along. Assam has been holding her hand out, and we've had so little to put into it. You know, I can remember our budget sessions, how we worked on them, to make the list, to know the needs and the order of them, and what was needed first and second and all. We'd send it home. Soon a letter would come from the Home Office saying, cut the budget. Cut the budget? We had a hard time even getting something onto it. We all had to agree on all of it. And we all had to see the need. Do you know that there's one item on the budget that's been on since 1957? And then, well, I remember one time especially, just when I was making up my own personal budget. We each have our own work budget. And as I was making it up, I was thinking of the needs that there were. And you know, it's easy to make up a budget, but it's hard to take anything off from it. And I finally just sat down and wondered and thought, I wonder how little the people at home really want me to do.
How is it then that you're going back again? Why don't you just give up and say, I'm through? Actually, don't you have more reason to think so now than at the time of the earthquake or the Chinese invasion?
Ah, no. God is still working, and there are many doors open yet in Assam. There's a door with the tribal people, and then there's a great turning to God, and then we've got to give them the Bible in their own language. Really, we can't give up now.
God has spoken to us in the first 3 great catastrophes.
Yes.
Maybe he will speak to us through the 4th one, too.
Oh, he has. He has. I've been home a year and a half, and I have seen how God has blessed in a material way the people of our Baptist General Conference. I've been challenged by these blessings. Do you know that I'm going back to Assam and make out the biggest work budget that I can use? And I'm no longer going to ask, how little do they want us to do? I'm going to ask, how much do they want us to do?
What shall I give thee, Master? Thou wouldest die for me.
I know the people here at home have the means to send what we need to win the people of Assam to Christ. And I know they want us to win them to Christ. And I believe that by God's grace, they will send